We are happy to welcome to our show the British rapper and political activist and analyst and commentator Lowkey, who, as I said at the top of the show, has really become one of the most influential voices when it comes to Israel and the Palestinian conflict, and in particular, the war in Gaza. He has a large audience that follows him and listens to him, and that's for good reason. He's very effective in his analysis, and we've been hoping to get him on the show for a while, and we are happy to have him here. Lowkey, welcome to the show. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Glenn. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let me begin with this. We've had a lot of critics of the Israeli war in Gaza on our show. We've had debates on this. We've had Israeli supporters. My view is very clear to my audience, my critiques of this war. So before we get into that, which I think my audience is kind of familiar with, let me ask you, we're currently going on the third month of this war. There are 16,000 people in Gaza who have been killed by the Israelis. That's probably a conservative number. Generally, there are people buried underneath the rubble who aren't included in that count. The U.S. government has said those numbers are, if anything, undercounts. Just today, there was a resolution that the UN Security Council voted on to call for a ceasefire between the Gazans and the Israelis, and 13 of the 15 countries voted for it. One country, the UK, abstained, but the United States voted against it. So the United States is protecting Israel at the UN, as it always does. It's feeding the Israelis the weapons it's using to bomb. Do you have any meaningful hope that anything or anyone will be able to stop the Israelis anytime soon in what they're doing?
Well, to start with, Glenn, I just wanted to deal very quickly with some of the issues you were just discussing. Now, TikTok has also banned the account of the website that I work for, Mint Press. It's important to note that the content policy lead for TikTok Canada is Alexander Corbell, who is also simultaneously the vice president of the NATO Association of Canada. What you also have, in addition to that, was I discovered that the feature policy manager for TikTok is Greg Anderson. Now, Greg Anderson formerly worked in psychological operations for NATO. Now, when I discovered that and published that information some time back, Greg Anderson actually edited his LinkedIn profile to delete the psychological operations aspect of his work at NATO. We also know that Bo Patterson works as a threat analyst for TikTok's Trust and Safety division. Well, Patterson was previously a targeting analyst for the CIA. You also have the example of Victoria McCullough, who worked for the Department of Homeland Security and the White House itself, and now currently works as Trust and Safety at TikTok. So what we're talking about with TikTok, and you can look up the work by Alan McLeod on the Mint Press website, the NATO to TikTok pipeline. It's very important for people to understand the process that has played out at that company. There's many who have come from being employed at the CIA and NATO to being employed in very sensitive positions in TikTok.
No, let me just interject there before you go on, because I do want to just add to that, which we did a show, as I said, confronting this moronic idea that that TikTok is this arm of the CCP and that it's being used to propagandize the American public on behalf of China. And we've also done shows before showing how many people from the U.S. security state are placed into the censorship units of big tech platforms. In fact, Facebook's primary censorship official is a longtime operative of the CIA. He was at the CIA for 20 years, and now he runs Facebook's censorship. And I think some people think TikTok is immune from this because they're Chinese, but the reality is they've had the same infiltration. TikTok has been on this hiring spree, in fact, from Facebook, from Google, to get all these U.S. security state operatives on board to their content moderation staff to show the Pentagon and the CIA and the Biden White House that they're on board with whatever censorship the United States government wants as a condition to staying in the United States, because what they really care about is the profit. These are capitalists who are trying to make money from the U.S. market. So I think it's an extremely good point, and I'm glad you detailed that. All right, go ahead and, unless you have more to say on that, go ahead and address the question about this war and how it might at some point come to an end?
Absolutely. Well, Israel has the stated objective of driving the 2 million population, 2.3 million population of Gaza into the Sinai desert. It seems that the United States, while supplying, supposedly, according to the Israeli Ministry of Defense, over 200 planes of weaponry throughout this war. We also know that the British are involved in logistics. Some of the flights of US weapons have gone from British base in Cyprus. We also know that Britain is intercepting communications of the resistance forces from its base in Cyprus. The NSA is there also and sharing that information on a daily basis with Israel. There has from time to time been 1 or 2 points that the US has pushed back on. So, for instance, when Israel cut off communications in Gaza, apparently it was due to some form of US intervention that communications were then returned to Gaza. But ultimately, the US has given Israel a blank check to do whatever it wants to this population. One could wonder whether this war will turn into the regional war that it seems Israel wants. It seems to want to knock out Hezbollah in Lebanon and then possibly try and push the US into going for a final regime change showdown with Iran. But it seems that while they may be able to achieve the movement of a large number of people out of Gaza into the Sinai Desert, it seems the Egyptian government are giving indications that they will agree after being given promises to forgive debt and whatnot. That the wider regional war hopefully can be pushed back on. We need China and Russia to take more forthright positions and stand up to Israel in a more effective way. The question is, where are the red lines? You know, the United States gives Israel normally about $10.4 million of military aid on a daily basis. But where we are now, it's obviously increased massively. You know, Israel is believed to have carried out assassinations in 18 different sovereign states around the world. We really have to question at this point, does what we understand to be the international community even view the Palestinians as human beings? This is just an unconscionable level of human suffering that has been unleashed on Gaza.
I want to talk a little bit more about the Israeli goal, because you said the stated goal was to drive the Gazans into the Sinai. There have been military documents that have discussed this. And I mean, this is the open policy of the Netanyahu government, that Gaza and the West Bank, which they now call Judea and Samaria, that Ron DeSantis is now calling that in order to indicate that all of this land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea belongs to Israel, that it's all part of Greater Israel. And obviously, if it has to be part of Greater Israel, it means Israel needs to take full control of it all and drive the Palestinians out. But the stated goal of this operation from the start has been to destroy Hamas. And in terms of that stated goal, I'm having a hard time understanding what that would even mean, because it reminds me a lot of after 9/11, the United States obviously had a great quest and thirst for vengeance. There were Americans who just wanted to see the Middle East, parts of the Middle East being blown up, parts wanting to see Muslims and Arabs dying, because that's who they perceived as having attacked the United States on 9/11. And part of that mission was really ill-defined. It was just pure bloodthirst. And obviously that's part of what's going on in Israel. But one of the things the United States found, and this is the United States government will tell you this and has said it, is that the more you kill people in a region, the more you bomb them, the more terrorists you're creating. Obviously, the more people standing by watching the United States killing people, the more people want to come and kill the United States and kill Americans. Isn't it? What do you think is going on in the mind of Gazans, the mind of people in the West Bank, the minds of the people in this region, as they watch every day these hundreds of Gazans being blown up and killed, and babies being killed by these extraordinary numbers? I mean, what is this going to look like for Israel when they ever do stop?
Well, this apocalyptic war is something that has many people in the region are left with a deep scar on their psyche from viewing these images. Of course, the war on terror era, which entailed the dropping of 46 bombs per day by the US and allies for 20 years straight, on average 46 bombs per day, the invasion of numerous countries and the displacing of over 30 million people. We have always understood that the ideals which the United States professes to hold are actually false and are not have no real truth to them. But unfortunately, the worry is that you have had this in Nur al-Masalha, in the fantastic book, The Expulsion of the Palestinians, goes into detail about the trajectory of the Zionist movement, from Zionist thinkers like Theodore Herzl to Chaim Weizmann. The idea of population transfer has always been there. And as you say, if Israel is to establish its complete control over Gaza and push the Palestinians out into Egypt and try and then distribute them around the world, without a doubt, there will be sustained resistance from many different quarters. The Israeli Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Education have for some years been funding organizations who also have the stated objective of replacing Al-Aqsa with a temple, which some believe to have existed around 2,000 years ago. Now, this is a form of what Yusuf al-Kabir, the Iraqi Jewish lawyer, termed militant archaeology. And essentially, for the Zionist dream to be realized, you are talking about the dispossession of Palestinians, the cruelty on an industrial scale. Absolutely, this will give birth to more resistance. And not just in Palestine, you will see the US presence across the region become more and more precarious by the day.
Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.